Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday evening. It is 9 o'clock. Time for the movie review, which is Ghostbusters. But first, as always, a little music. Enjoy.
We are all the heirs to Scotland, as a nation proudly stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let a flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, folks. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all comfy. Hope you're all cozy. And I hope you're all looking forward to the live stream. So, before I go any further, let me say that I have been in touch with our good friend Steve Cray by telephone, and he's feeling pretty poorly at the moment. And as our stream continues, Steve will be cozied up with a couple of quilts, might even have a hot water bottle by now, and he's just going to be listening in. He will not be taking an active part in tonight's stream because I say he's feeling pretty poorly and he is in a certain amount of pain at the moment. So that's the situation with Steve. He's got his lovely dogs in with him, of course. So we can only wish and hope that he gets over this, whatever this problem is, as quickly as possible and as painlessly as possible. So there we are, folks. It's a damn shame, but what can you do? Anyway, we have a full evening in front of us with the Ghostbusters movie. We have Eki, we have Samuel, we have Sensum, and we have William. And myself, of course. So, who picked this movie but Eki? So I suppose Eki is the natural place we should start. So Eki, give me a shortened version of why you chose this particular film at this particular time.
The long and the short of it is, it's a fun, stupid movie, and I just thought it'd be nice to pick a fun, stupid movie. That's really what it came down to.
This close to Christmas, of course, which always
Well,
helps.
yeah, that's true, but at the same time, I don't know. I love the sci-fi genre. I also like fantasy, and Ghostbusters straddles the two. It's both sci-fi and fantasy at the same time. So, and again, it's just big stupid fun, which I like. So,
That's good enough reason. We'll get on to other versions of the same movie a little later, no doubt. Sensum, what are your opening thoughts on this film, Ghostbusters?
I remember queuing up to go and see this when it came out in '84. I went to see it with my uncle and my cousin. And my cousin's a couple of years older than me. And obviously we went with my uncle because they were down visiting. Actually in Stoke, we went to see it in, I think it was the Odeon in Anley. And I do remember queuing up. And I think it was probably one of the first films that it had all, I mean, because we had the Star Wars sort of blip in the 70s and then through the early 80s. We had E.T., I think it was in 82. And then this was the first film where there seemed to be, it was hyped. There was a shed load of merchandising, including computer games, because I had the Sinclair Spectrum version of this game when it came out. And it wasn't like, a film that was massively hyped and then it was a complete and utter disappointment. It was probably the first film that was hyped and was as rewarding, especially as a young kid, young teenager, as all the hype was. Because, like I say, I mean, the hype was in Star Wars and especially Empire Strikes Back, which I think came out in 1980, and they didn't disappoint. I enjoyed E.T., but I was probably getting a bit older for that one. I think that was more of a younger kid's film, whereas the Star Wars stuff was still pertinent. So Ghostbusters came around, and it was just, it was great fun on all counts. It had that cracking tune by Ray Parker Jr. I think it broke box office records at the time. I think it was one of the, and certainly from a merchandising point of view, and then obviously they had spin-offs like cartoons, etc. in the 80s. So it was obviously it wasn't as big as Star Wars, but it was certainly probably the biggest hit from Star Wars coming out to then, in my opinion. And I remember I think I might have watched it again but years ago, I think I watched it again when it came out on the television, which would have been sort of 87, 88, so a few years later. But I don't think I've watched it again since, and it's still good fun. It's the kind of film that you'd happily if somebody hadn't seen it, you'd happily recommend them to watch it, especially if they had kids. So it's a great film.
Okay, doc. Samuel, what are your opening thoughts on this film, Ghostbusters?
No fee is too big. No job is too big. Stuck in the guts, guys, with Ghostbusters. I love it.
Oh, I remember well. You did enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it. It's good fun. It never gets old. Watched it so many times, and it's always fun just to see the cast members trying not to crack a smile and laugh and break character. And it was one of these films where, when you read about it, it was somewhat lucky that it became the film that it became.
Okay. William, what are your opening thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, great pick by Eki. I love it. Grew up watching it. Had all the gear. Even born in '87, still grew up watching it, and had all the gear. And they had every single bit of merchandise you could possibly imagine. So along with that, Ghostbusters and the Turtles, that was pretty much my childhood, along with Sonic and Nintendo. So yeah, it was a great pick. I was more than happy to watch it again.
Did you watch it with the family?
Well, no, I never got my. I did ask my youngest son Billy, but he wasn't keen. It was too old. So
Is
there
that
you go.
right? Is that what you thought?
Yeah, and I thought maybe he was a wee bit scared of it. Because I remember even when I was young, I thought parts of it were a bit creepy. So maybe it's that.
Yeah, it's quite amazing to me that such a fun film can produce that effect in some folk. That the actual idea of ghosts does touch raw nerves with some folk. It's interesting. I find it interesting. Not everyone, of course, but some people. I watched it, of course, like everyone else. Thought it was really good, really funny at the time. Interesting idea, something very, very new, I thought. And all very well done. Within the confines of special effects at the time, of course. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So, Sensum, out of the central characters, is there anyone that you would pick out more than any other for special attention?
Well, I think it goes without saying that Bill Murray's deadpan delivery across most of the scenes that he was in was, pretty special. And once, like I say, it's always the delivery, and oftentimes Samuel said, you can see the other guys, because he'll come out with a deadpan line, and the other guys in the cast will be like corpsing in the background. You can see they're dying to burst out laughing, including Sigourney Weaver, who on occasion has to look away a little bit so you don't get the smirk appearing on her face. Because I'm certain, because a lot of those guys were in Saturday Night Live, and that was based on ad libs. So I'm certain a lot of the dialogue wasn't 100% scripted, and Reitman's just said, "Yeah, just go for it, guys." And Murray will have come out with some crackers in what the other lads weren't even expecting, and they'll just torn them up. And I thought Although, well, like I say, because when you look at the makeup of the cast, it was pretty much like an extended Saturday Night Live sketch that they, like a sketch that they thought up, and it was obviously written by Aykroyd and Ramis. So that's probably, when I say written, it was probably lots of instances. Bill will come up with something here, or Reitman just sort of let them get on with it. So it did feel like when Saturday Night Live sketches used to be great and used to look forward to seeing what it was going to be, that week's theme or whatever. It felt very much like one of those, but obviously with a much bigger budget and a lot better sort of special effects and acting and everything. So, yeah, for me, Murray's the standout character, but I also like the role played by Ernie Hudson. So he comes in later on as the sort of the fourth bloke, and he's got one of the best lines in the entire film. You got the dead, you got the sort of the secretary, and she's saying, "You believe in ghosts, Loch Ness monster, aliens?" He goes, "If it pays a regular check, I'll believe in anything you want me to."
Exactly.
Which I thought was good, and like for me, it was Murray definitely, but I also like the Ernie Hudson character because he had some cracking one-liners. Like he said, "I've only been working with these guys for 2 weeks, and I've seen shit that'll turn you white." That's a brilliant line.
Yeah, exactly. I think you get the impression, don't you, when you watch that film, that they didn't stick too closely to what was ever written on the page. You get the impression that there was a lot of leeway by all of them. Well, that fell in deaf ears, John. Okay. William, any outstanding character for you, apart from Murray?
Well, yeah, Murray is definitely stand out. But the wee guy, what's his name again? Lewis.
Oh, right.
The wee lad. I thought he played the part really well, and he even just looks comical looking at him. But yeah, Murray for me sort of stole the show. Even at the very beginning, I'm unsure what scene, but he told the guy, "Look, back off. I'm a scientist." And even that cracked me up when he said that. He was definitely a standout. But yeah, the wee guy, I thought he played the part really well. But on what you said there, I think you did get the impression they had a lot of it was on the back of their own sort of initiative in free form, and they went with it, and it worked really well. I think it's right up there with the ultimate classics. It just, you can't really beat it, and I think they all done really good. It's in a comedy sense, it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, even just thinking about it, I'm laughing. And the lines that Sansom mentioned, they were great. The wee guy as well at the very end, when they're taking him out, they say to him, "Oh, we want to take a sample of your brain tissue." And he says, "Okay." And he's walking away. He's like, "Okay, no problem." And it's comical. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Does anyone do your taxes?
Yeah, he's always looking for business, isn't he?
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. How about a slightly more objective view of the film? And I'll ask all of you this. I'll start with Samuel. When you see that film now, how do you feel about the special effects? Do you think the special effects still hold up? Are you willing to accept the special effects and their limitations? Or do you think takes away from the film itself.
The special effects hold up quite well because there's a large amount of practical effects in amongst um, the the other stuff. So it's mostly practical, other than uh, some of the actual ghost stuff, particularly for Slimer. But it looks really good. It just looks good. You know, it's not when you think, oh, that's really cheesy looking. It's no, it's surprisingly held up well, I thought.
Would you agree with that, Eke?
Generally, yes. Um, Personal opinion, I just have a soft spot for practical effects and older technologies. I don't know why, but for some reason, all of the CGI has no interest in me at all. I just don't care. So, yeah, it does look dated. Yeah, uh, when Slimer is going around the chandelier, it doesn't look all that great, to be honest. And at the same time, it feels more real than CGI. So it, I have this weird thing where I know that a movie is fake, and I mean, good heavens, I think the human eye sees at like 60 frames per second or something, like some incredibly large number that you wouldn't have expected. And 24 frames per second, that's Academy. 23976, but whatever. And you can tell the difference between Academy frame rate and 60 frames per second. I prefer the Academy frame rate, even though it's choppier, even though I can actually see all of the individual frames if I'm really looking for it. Partly because I know it's fake. I know it's not real. I'm watching a story. I know it's a story. And the more that I see things that are real, things that were produced by human hands, the easier it is for me to like get quote immersed end quote. So I thought that the special effects are great. If anything, I lament that there aren't more movies made with special effects that are completely in camera and practical. Um, I do think that that's a personal taste issue, though. I'm Gen X, so that's what I grew up with, and I do understand that. Yeah, CGI. You can do things with CGI that you can't with practical, but I don't know why it looks unreal and it takes me out every time. So I prefer practical. That's just a me thing, though.
Sure. I think one of the effects that really stands up even today is the mechanism they use to catch the ghosts, the beams. I mean, that's quite incredible. It's probably because of the excellent sound that they used for it.
Yeah, actually, the sound design was amazing. Even turning on those little backpacks that they had, I loved that sound as a kid. Sound design is amazing.
Yeah. What do you think, Sensor? Do you think the sound really enhances what is going on the screen?
Yeah, it definitely is. It makes the tools that they're using more believable. So even when you see them, they've got that little detector thing in the sort of the antlers, the aerials like fan out when you get close to something. Even little tricks like where the pitch it goes in intensity, or like sort of a nod towards a Geiger counter, that kind of thing. And then the starting of the of the backpacks. I think if I remember rightly seeing that, it was something like they recorded the starting up of an old valve based preamp and manipulated the sound of that to, you know, either sped it up slightly or slowed it down, wherever it was, to give it that sort of real sense of warming up. You know, a very analog type sort of warming up sound, which was very very clever. And also one of the things that always stood out is as soon as they roll out of the fire station that they've sort of rented as their head office, and they go out in the repurposed hearse or ambulance or whatever it was.
I think it was an ambulance, actually.
The sound of the sirens, because they altered this, like they toned it down by, you know, a few semitones to make it really sound off. But you knew exactly what it was, but it sounded off. But most of the special effects and especially the sound design, especially like towards the end when they're battling the main baddie, the different sound design effects that go into those various scenes to make you believe that, yeah, this is something coming out of a parallel dimensional portal or whatever, and then the sounds of the flux plasma beam things or whatever they're called. Don't cross the streams. We'll cross the streams now. No, hold on a minute. No,
cross the streams.
So it was, but that, like I say, there was a lot of old school design. I mean, everything now, particularly a lot of sound design, not all, but a lot of sound design is in what they call in the box. So in other words, pretty much software oriented. There's still few composers and sound engineers who use organic sounds and then manipulate them with various processing techniques. Probably one of the best exponents of that for creating very unique sounds, especially like landscaping sounds, is Hans Zimmer. You know, he still does a lot of his own original organic-based sound designs. So, you know, I think he won an Oscar for. I think he won an Oscar for June, the soundtrack to June recently, and that was all sort of organic-based sampling techniques that he using things there. And this was no different because obviously there wasn't really anything in the box then. So everything that you saw and everything that you heard was all pretty much, even though there is like, you know, synthesizers, etc. It was little tricks like, you know, got these things which, you know, the massive power source, like a nuclear power source, and we're going to turn them on. Right, okay, so you've got to feel like, you know, these things are going to get ready for action, like, you know, this warming up sort of phase. And he goes, oh yeah, I know, I've got this old, I don't know, wherever electronic GEC preamp, old valve preamp in the back. Let's have a, yeah, that's it. We'll knock it up an octave and and then it'll sound right. You know, just little things like that. It was really good.
And of course, having messed about with these things, you will know as well as I how difficult it is to get something that sounds like the thing that you're looking for, although you don't even know. Excuse me, you don't know what it is you're looking for until you hear it. But it's an incredible amount of work to do these sort of things, to find something that you think is suitable. Would you agree, Sensen?
Yeah, you know, there are some, especially when you look at the sort of the sci-fi films that were in the 70s, particularly. I mean, going back to Star Wars again, the sound of the laser blast, that ba-choom type sound, was actually somebody found that if you look at sort of telephone masts and they've got those torsion cables to keep the telephone masts up, you know, to keep them steady, so they're not just like a pole in the ground. They've got these wires so they don't get blown over. And because they're under quite high tension, somebody went up and hit it with a wooden thing and it made this because it was like the vibration of it going back and returning. That's where they got the sound from for the actual laser blast. So there was all kind of things there, and it's also it's a point where does sound engineering and where does Foley artist cross over? Because there were certain sounds that the Foley artist would be expected to make, even though perhaps there's no sound, how do you produce a sound of a slimer sludging you to death sort of thing? So
Yeah, and what does a slimer sound like?
Well, a slimer sounds like if you've got a tub of Swarfiga, yeah, and what you do is you very quickly slam your fingers into this tub of. That's what they did. They slammed the fingers into this tub of Swarfiga, and it makes this like that squelch sound. That's your slimer right there. So it was all little things like that, but it all very, very clever because they're all saying, well, what would that sound like? Well, what's slimy and horrible? And they found that, something, I think it was Swarfiga, it was something of that nature. Yeah. And by slamming the fingers quickly into this thing, it made that sort of suction stroke slime sound. So, it's all very interesting. But the thing is as well that I'm impressed with, and when you think about, these guys writing it, comics, and I've never known a thick comic, put it that way. A lot of comedians like to make on they're a bit thick, like a Johnny Vegas or whoever. But I've never met a comedian who's thick. They're all very clever to come up with various materials and that. But when you think about, the imagination it took to come up with all of the.
Is that why you're not? Is that why you're not a comedian?
Yes, because I am thick. Yeah, I admit it. But you always have to remember what I always say, William. I'm just an idiot, but I'm not a fool. There is a difference. But when you think about it, the imagination it took to come up with the visual effects, the audio effects, the Foley effects. We just don't make people. We just there'll be some older people still in the industry whose skills will be completely and utterly forgotten about because everything's sort of in the box now. And, they'll just, you could do it. I mean, like I say, there are very few, who will still try and use organic and natural sounds to do what they're trying to do. But a vast majority of them, because of, obviously, time is money, it's cheaper, it's quicker. But this it's pretty sterile. Whereas what you were paying for with the production teams of that era was imagination and being able to, we need to do this. Oh, I've never done that before. How can we do this? And they would literally think about, how can we do that? How can we make that seem not crap, basically? And in fairness, they pulled it off to a greater than lesser degree on many of the effects and many of the sound design stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of these aspects of films in general that too many people overlook. And a film like Ghostbusters is just loaded with all sorts of weird and wonderful sounds, because for almost everything that happens on the screen, there's a sound. Anyway,
they should have got the guy from Police Academy. He could have done it.
But
to be honest, remember the guy in Police Academy? He used to make all the sounds.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Something like him.
The CGI for me was a wee bit. I felt it wasn't great, and some of it they done well, but some of it was even a wee bit off-putting, I felt. But I guess it's hard to get that balance. I wasn't that keen on the CGI, to be honest, but the sets they used are so iconic.
How dare you? There wasn't a computer used in the entire movie.
Well, you can tell, right? But yeah, some of it I thought they did well, and then they just completely went all out with it, and it was like, and it was a wee bit off-putting. It sort of broke it up for me. But the sets they used, the premises, the car, the even the suits they wore, so iconic. And again, even today, it's definitely a right up there in the way of a classic.
Oh yeah, now that you mention it, I just remembered. Even as a little kid, I was always disappointed in the weird demon dogs because the puppets that they had, they were only able to lie down. So anytime you would see the demon dogs as a live action puppet rather than the not animatronics, stop motion. Anytime the demon dogs were not in stop motion, the practical puppets, they were always lying down, so they had to continually like bump into things and fall down, and so they're always lying down. Always, even as a little kid, I was like, that looks stupid. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You mentioned something that crossed my mind a bunch of times. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay. I personally didn't notice that, but there you go. I thought it was quite interesting the fact that such a film just grabbed the public imagination. Why do you think that was, Samuel? Why do you think it grabbed the public imagination so?
It's one of those ones where you could watch it as a family. It appealed to all ages, I think. You didn't need to be a science person. There was no convoluted plot. It was just here's ghosts, here's some bumbling guys trying to just make a buck, you know. Um, it's so funny. It's just so funny. Um, and you've got a memorable set piece at the end with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. You've got that theme song which will forever be played. You've got, as people have said already, you've got the the ghost. You've got Ecto-1, you've got Slimer, you've got uh, spores, molds, and fungus jokes. You've got the slimy, I you know, what was it, the health inspector guy. Um, it's just literally just stuff that holds up today, and it's 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 become iconic, and you get kids and adults dressing up in the Ghostbuster costumes now. Um, yeah, yeah,
So many aspects.
yeah. It's got it all.
Oh, it certainly got it all. You're absolutely right. People still dress up with all that stuff.
Yeah. And it has all these great one-liners,
Yeah.
that people will quote, like me. Yeah. I'll quite often just dig into a reference from Ghostbusters in everyday conversation and see if anybody spots it.
Well, that's a great thing about such movies. You're able to do it, and it's interesting on a social level, don't you think, guys, that films can do that? They can actually bring people together because of this common connection. Somebody says something from a film, and everyone recognizes the connection right away. It draws people.
Yeah, because you've got the who you're going to call.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people are going to say Ghostbusters is the response.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not even dependent on the song.
Yeah.
It's part of the dialogue, or becomes part of the dialogue.
Mhm.
If you were going to point up any weakness in such a film, where would you point to, William?
To be honest, it would be the CGI for me, the effects used. especially at the bit where she opens I think it's the fridge, and you've got the
Oh, yeah.
demon dog or bear. I think they called it a bear and a dog and a demon, but I was in absolute stitches when it chased the guy. I thought that was really funny, but the effects weren't that great. I guess they've kind of got their hands tied there, but hard for me to pick any real faults with it. It's just definitely right up there as a great film for me. But yeah, I would probably lean towards the CGI. The story was great. When I was a wee bit younger, I kind of would watch half of it and then not the end. I think it kind of, my attention must have fell away towards the end, so maybe I wasn't too into it. But today I can watch it no problem, and I think the end's quite good. I know the original script contained a demon figure at the end to fight a gigantic figure, but they changed it for a more humoristic approach. Seemingly, they went with the Marshmallow Man, and to be fair, they done that really well. I thought they done that really good. So if they done the effects more in that way, it might have been a better idea. But yeah, it's hard for me to pick much fault. To be fair.
What would you say, Eki? Would you agree with William here?
Yes and no. Yes, in that these special effects were clearly from like 1983. In terms of like the technology that they had at the time, yeah, it was released in 84, but it was produced and designed in 83 technology. It's not CGI. Those are special effects, man. That's all practical, bro. Those are actual people with puppets and such. It's ridiculous, but I love it. And yeah, I know it's stupid. I understand that it's all shadow puppets. I get it. Finger puppets would have been fine for me. Also, with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, the way that they filmed that is that they just got a guy in a big suit and they filmed it at like 1,000 frames a second and then played it back in super slow motion. So I don't think that they could have done that with the puppets. Like the librarian at the very beginning, like she needs to be scary immediately, and doing that in slow motion just isn't going to work. But I mean, whatever. These are just the choices that you have to sacrifice something to make a shot look at least acceptable to fill the role. But whatever. If I was going to pick a specific fault for the movie, I would actually say I kind of agree with William that near the end, one's attention does kind of fluctuate a little bit, and I believe that's because the main villain was not clearly delineated. So was there an evil force that they had to fight? Yeah, okay, sure. They're, Gozul or whatever the thing's name was, the chick with the flat top. They needed to have a villain, so they just concocted one, and then they had a little fight scene where, I don't know, they crossed the streams, and for some reason that's what gets her or something. And I don't know. I felt like that villain was like, they referenced it earlier in the movie, but I never felt like it was a real threat. And yeah, okay, fine. It's a kids movie, so like, how serious do I need to be about all of this? Not terribly. So it's not like it's not a game changer. It's nothing that's going to destroy my opinion of the movie. But I do think that the ending wasn't as strong as it could have been. I feel like they needed to have a much more clear villain on the ghost level that was a specific and unified ghost, much in the same way that they tried to rectify that in Ghostbusters 2 with Vigo the Carpathian. I feel like they did a better job of a villain in that movie, but it didn't have the magic of the first movie. The first movie kind of was lightning in a bottle.
Sure.
All of the ad libs and all of the just weird little things that they would do in the movies, in the first movie, they were just entertaining, and it was silly, and it was good fun more than anything else. So
Mm.
it kind of didn't need to have the 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 best engineered script in the world. So that's sort of a nitpick on my part. But then again, like I always nitpick on that. No matter what movie it is, even if when they're my own picks, I'm always like, oh, the plot wasn't as good as it could have been. So it's not like that's a really negative thing coming from me. But I think that would actually be just about it because pretty much everything else is great. Again, just lightning in a bottle. It's just a neat movie that came out at a neat time.
Yeah. Would you agree, Samuel, that this was a kids' movie?
A kids movie? No, I would say it's, well, possibly. I would put it more down to a young teenager, older teenager movie first and foremost, rather than sort of 6 to 10 year olds. I would say it's more like 11 to 20 year olds. Um, Definitely the college, the American college market would be a big one. I would assume that they would have gone for, particularly with the style of humor.
Actually, you're right. I'm going to rescind my comment. No, you're correct. There were a lot of sexual elements to the movie. So, yeah, rescinded on my part. Sorry about that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of references between Bill Murray's character and Sigourney Weaver's, where he's chasing her all the time. There's all sorts of innuendos there that don't quite fit with a kiddies film, but it's innocent enough for children. I think. I think that's where it crosses the barrier because it seems to be innocent enough, and the references to sex are really few and far between, and they're not obscene, and they're delivered in a particular way by Murray. As they're almost throwaways from his point of view.
Yeah, there's a lot of innuendo. Obviously, you've got the keymaster and the gatekeeper,
Yeah.
the natural, meaning of that, and then you've got some playful uh, dialogue between Egon and Janine, and then
Yeah.
obviously in the second film you've got Janine and uh, Lewis, uh, but it's a bit more in your face, obviously, in that one. Uh,
Absolutely. So I take it we all approve of the music track.
Well, yeah.
Theme song is amazing. Even the bit of music when the ghosts are released from the containment trap, and you've got that typical 80s synth with a bit of bit of song words in there. It's nice,
Mm.
and then you've got a wee bit of playful piano music as they're going about the hotel.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Exactly.
Yes,
So
so you had the main theme, but the actual incidental music, so the actual composition, the score, if you like, was by Elmer Bernstein, believe it or not.
yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Here we go.
What do you mean? You got some stock cheek on you tonight, William. It's this outrageous.
Now, the
No,
music
Elmer
was
Bernstein.
great. It was great, to be fair.
The thing is, Bernstein's 80s stuff, and there isn't a lot of it because I don't think well, I can't remember exactly when he passed away, but but the thing is, even though it was the 80s and there was always that temptation in the 80s in particularly sort of that sort of new romantic era of the 80s, sort of 82, 84, 85. to overdo synthesizers to death because it had to be, it's the 80s. We do synthesizers. Bernstein never did that, and neither did Henry Mancini. But I tell you, one of my favorite composers of that era was a chap called Lalo Schifrin, who did some of the most iconic music to films in the 60s and 70s, particularly the work that he did with Clint Eastwood in the Dirty Harry series. Sudden Impact, I think, came out in the same year, 1984, which was the fourth of the Dirty Harry films. And the theme tune by Lalo Schifrin on that is an absolute shocker. It is dreadful. It's truly woeful. It's one of the worst. And I'm thinking, I'm talking about a bloke who I respect greatly for his musical compositions. But Bernstein, I think, because it wasn't it was a nice amalgamation of the pop rock synth of the time, plus also some serious use of orchestral instruments to add the colour when it needed to particular scenes where there was a bit of gravitas and a bit of pause and, oh, hold on a minute, we don't know what's going on here. It was sort of harking back to old orchestral techniques and old orchestrations rather than, I would very much use, a string section for this bit to add a bit of tension, but no, I'm going to use this Roland Juno 8 to just spaz in a whole host of shit just because I can. Bernstein didn't do that, which if he had done it, the film wouldn't have worn. Because I think the score makes a lot of films. In fact, in a lot of instances, sometimes the scores in the films are a lot better than the films themselves. And this isn't one of those cases, obviously, but I think the score was appropriate for the various scenes. So when it needed levity and a little bit of humor, then it was light and levity. And when it needed to key in the main theme, the Ghostbusters theme, it did that.
Yeah.
But it didn't sort of just go all 1980s on it. It did it respectfully and did it well. Like I say, if you've ever, once again, it's a brilliant film. Sudden Impact's a great film. I really do like that film, but the theme tune is horrendous. It's the score is dreadful, absolutely. I wince every time I see it because I thought, this is a great film, and I'm just hearing this dreadful score, knowing that Lalo was thinking, these synths, we got to get these synths in these days. I'm like, no.
Well,
anyway.
that's a wonderful thing about Ghostbusters, which is what I appreciate, is they take the ghosts seriously. That's played straight, the ghosts that are in the film. And I think that helps enormously to sell the whole idea of what they're about. Because it's not them that add the comedy, it's the ghosts themselves that add the comedy. The ghosts are playing, take my point here, the ghosts are playing it their part straight. And our heroes are reacting straightforwardly to them. The comedy comes from what it is the ghosts themselves actually do. There's no undercutting the ghosts.
Yeah,
even at the end with that stupid marshmallow man, they take all of that seriously.
Yeah.
This is
it's
actually
just there to be accepted. We're just there to accept it, and they're like, whatever. This is a huge, giant marshmallow man. Yeah, whatever.
Exactly. It's not.
I actually think that that's a good point, though. I think that's the reason why movies now are in such terrible shape. They don't take their subject matter seriously at all. And even though Ghostbusters was a comedy, it's a silly one. I mean, you've got a bunch of people running around with like backpacks that are little nuclear reactors or something. Like, that's stupid. and they're capturing ghosts with technology. Again, that's stupid. But the thing
Yeah.
is, within the context of the movie, they took the subject matter seriously. That is to say, within the fiction,
Yeah.
these things were actually happening, and they had import. They were doing things that mattered, and they were fighting against something that was within the context of the movie objectively bad
Yep.
at the easiest or evil at the worst.
Yeah.
Notice, by the way, that they did sneak in a reference to Gozul was a god worshipped by the Hittites. I will let people think on that as they will. That's a very funny reference for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But anyway, the yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the movie still has staying power, because it is imaginative and the characters are actually fighting against something that is real to them,
Yep.
and they're giving it their all. And I feel like that's missing in a lot of movies right now. That's also one of the reasons why I picked this movie, is because I liked the fact that they were trying to do something that was impactful on more than just their own lives. They're trying to help out like the world in New York in this case. And it meant something. And I thought it sounds terrible of me to say it even in this way, but like there's an innocence to it, almost a naivete to it that I freaking love and I miss. And I lament that we don't have movies like that we don't have stories like that.
Yeah. Yes, because even when you consider the containment unit that they're supposed to be in once they're caught, all of that is 100% serious. It has a logic, and they explain it all. This is what I thought was marvelous. That the thing is actually overlooked. They've got explanations for everything. Doesn't matter that these explanations are within themselves meaningless, but within the confines of the fiction, it's all terribly 100% serious and is regarded and treated as such. If you think of the amount of times uh, history is referenced when they're talking about particular ghosts, uh, where they all come from and what stable they belong to and all this stuff.
The end of days.
Yeah, all of that stuff. You say, well, that's what gives it that its own little gravitas within its own fiction, and I think
Yeah, and they added,
makes it stay.
sorry, they added a kind of scientific element to it as well,
Yeah,
which was quite good. And a good scene I like is when he goes to the woman's house to investigate, and he's asking her questions, and she's like, "You don't sound like a scientist." And he says, "What do I sound like?" And she says, "A game show host." I thought that was class.
yeah. His
And then he
ambition.
opens the door and he slides in at a jaunty angle. I love that. When he goes to the kitchen in the very next shot, but whatever. Anyway,
Yeah,
And that scene as well also
Comical, great scene.
covers some of the previous things that we discussed, because you've got the sniffer gizmo that he's got. There's no explanation to it, but he's just puffing it, squeezing the gizmo, and it's making it. And she says, "What does that do?" It's like, I don't know. It's like, and then he plays with the piano, and he's like, "Yeah,
Yeah, he says. She says, "What's that?"
Yeah.
She says, "What's that?" And he says, "Oh, it's technical."
Yeah, one of our little toys. Yeah,
exactly.
and
And
it's
if you
just got this great sound.
and if you compare that to films that were made years ago, I'm thinking of Abbott and Costello, of films of that ilk, even Young Frankenstein. They do the same thing in their films as well. the things that appear in it are taken seriously and treated as such.
Yeah, I think that's actually what I'm thinking of. They're taking the threat seriously. The villain is taken seriously.
Yeah.
So even though there may be a lampooning of the characters and the situation or whatever, at the very least, they take the threat seriously. Even though they're doing a bunch of weird pratfalls and silly quips and whatnot, there's still an actual boogeyman that they have to deal with. And I think that's, yeah, probably my favorite element. But anyway.
And I think that's what carries the film into today, makes it acceptable today, because a modern audience will recognize that. Even young audiences will recognize that the ghost or the ghosts are taken seriously. They are not lampooned at all.
Also, the seriousness with which they took those ghosts. I remember when I was a little kid, I watched that movie, probably a little younger than I should have watched it. And, dude, I would have these elaborate fantasies about what I would do if I was ever faced with like a ghost problem and I had little proton packs or whatever. And it was great. Like when you're a little kid, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
It lends itself to fantasy in the positive sense, I mean.
of course. I no doubt there would be kids up and down the land, all the lands, who probably made these packs and played that game of being a Ghostbuster.
Definitely. Definitely.
I can't see that you wouldn't. I mean, I put myself in that position and imagine what would I have done if I would be 9 or 10 and seen that film. I'd have built one of those packs somehow because it lends itself to it. Again, it's the strength of the film, the imaginative element of a movie that can inspire that sort of thing in children. And I'm sure it must have. Can't imagine children not making those things or something like it. And that would help to cement the film's place in culture, which it has done, very much so. And I think that leads us very nicely, lads, to its brilliant follow-up film. I'm sure you've all got lots to say about the brilliant follow-up film that was born in its wake. What would you say to its follow-up film, William? You think it was as good as the original? Oh, William's not with us. I'll throw that over to Samuel.
It's one of those films that exploded in such a way that it could have been near perfect and it wouldn't have managed to follow up in any way. It would have underwhelmed. And sadly, it underwhelmed big time. I still remember seeing it in the cinema, being very disappointed in the film. It's still a good film.
The same film?
Yeah, the Ghostbusters 2. Yeah.
No.
No. Are we jumping to the?
Oh, we're jumping forward in time.
Are we jumping to the role reversal version?
Yes, that's the
Right.
version. We can go back to number 2
well,
shortly.
To be fair and transparent, I haven't seen that film. I will never watch that film. I have watched reactions to the film, and that is an abomination on cinema making. It doesn't do anyone any favors. The actresses in it doesn't do them any favors. It obviously got them a lot of money, but it's just vomit on the screen. Well, not on the screen.
Is that the Whammins one that was
Yeah,
made
Yes.
years
yeah.
back?
I thought
Yeah.
we'd skip over the second.
Yeah, quick
Ghostbuster.
jokes.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm the same as Samuel. I'll probably never ever watch that one, and I will. You know, it's once again. Let's take a great classic film and just change all of the main protagonists into whammins and be quite woke about. I mean, I haven't watched it now. I know that Melissa McCarthy's in there, and in fairness, I've watched a few of her comedies, and they're not that bad. But I think it was just an excuse to get a boatload of screeching harpies on the screen just to spoil, the people like myself, Eki, and Samuel, probably of that sort of bracket, just to piss on our chips, basically. However, I did see the one that was called Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was the one that they did, which harkened back to the original cast and the original ethos. And in fairness, that wasn't that bad. I mean, I saw it because it was one of them ones where, oh, do you want to watch it? And I was like, because I think it was on one of the movie things like Prime or Netflix, and I got goaded into it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be horrendous. Because initially, I actually thought that was the one they were on about. I thought, oh, Christ, no, not that bloody shite with Melissa McCarthy and that. And they put it on, and I'm thinking, and I was probably about half an hour in. I'm thinking, when are they going to get these horrible women in? And it didn't happen. And it was a pleasant surprise because it was more like an episode of Stranger Things, which I think is what they were actually going for, sort of to try and harken back to that 80s sort of feel.
Yeah.
And also, they brought in the Ernie Hudson character early on, who was now a very successful businessman in that particular film. So little tricks like that. And the main protagonist, she's the daughter of the Harold Ramis character in this film, who passed away by a few years by then.
Egon.
Egon Spengler. And
Egon and Janine,
the Janine woman, so the secretary, she was the one who his daughter goes to look at his old property, what she's inherited, and she's on the bones of her ass, basically. She's got a couple of kids, not really got much of a job going on and everything. And she gets there thinking, oh, well, at least I can sell this gaff. And you can't sell it. It's mortgage to the hilt. So it's all bad news. But it was I actually, I don't know. I watched it and I thought, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. It was nowhere near the horror story that I was imagining that other one was going to be. But
it was a pleasant surprise. I was expecting the worst, and I quite liked it, even though there was some elements of new style Hollywood in there, for sure. But I enjoyed it. It was a touching homage to the original too.
Yeah, and if they draw a line under it there, that would be fair enough. They just don't try and rehash it to death by doing yet another. Because once again, we talk about the films of the era of the 80s, and there was a lot of originality in there, a lot of imagination, and it's the imagination part which is just completely and utterly lacking in Hollywood, because every single one of those most recent Marvel flicks since the Avengers Endgame or wherever it was came out have just completely and utterly flopped, because they're trying to span a wurzel in all of the wokerati bullshit. And now they're talking about, oh, well, we'll make another Avengers one with Iron Man in again. Let's get the crowds back, because every single film they've made since that one, what the Marvel canon, if you like, have just completely and utterly flopped, because once again, people are fed up of being sort of told, oh, you must accept that Captain Marvel is this strong go girl boss babe. And it's like, no. You know, oh well, you must accept that this no flop, 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 flop. Eventually, at some point, they'll get the message, and you know, there'll be this. Well, what will happen is it'll be exactly the same as what happened with things like bloody that Maverick film, you know, the Top Gun Maverick film, where all of the critics slammed the shit out of it because it wasn't pandering to the Rainbow Brigade. And although there was a couple of woke elements, well, not really that woke, there was like women fighter pilots in it and stuff like that. But apart from that, it was pretty much a straight down the middle. This is a decent action flick, pretty decent characters, good storyline. Yeah, all of the critics hated it and all of the fans absolutely loved it. And you can see that happening all over where, you know, these films, the more woke it can be, twats on things like Rotten Tomatoes will give it like 98% approval rating, like bloody Black Panther 2 or whatever it is. And The Woman King, yeah, 98% fan rating, 10%. Boom, have that. You know, you might have a Rotten Tomato sort of press score of 98%, but they make up like, you know, 6 people who attending the viewing of your film, which they got for free. No real person wants to see it because it's shite.
Exactly. Have you got anything to say, Eki, about the all-female version?
Yeah, I didn't see it. I have no interest. I wanted to talk a little bit about Ghostbusters 2, only in that what a great, disappointing follow-up, but they swung for the fences, and I appreciated that they tried for a proper villain in Ghostbusters 2. That's the only other Ghostbusters movie I've watched. Outside of that, I have no interest. But you guys talking about Afterlife, I almost want to watch that now.
Yeah, it's not honestly, mate. I wouldn't have watched it unless I was shanghaied into it. But when I had watched it, honestly, genuinely wasn't that bad at all. I'm certain Samuel will echo that.
No, it's genuinely a good film. It's not fantastic. It doesn't hold up to Ghostbusters 1. It's maybe on the level of 2, or maybe just below it. But it is a good film. For me, it's like a 7 out of 10.
So it's a good once through, but that's probably about as far as it's going to go.
Yeah.
Well, now he's piqued my interest. I might even have a look at it myself. Okay, let's talk about 2. Who wants to kick this one off? Eki.
Well, I don't want to go too far into number 2 because it actually isn't. It's not a great movie, and it's corny like you wouldn't believe. It's my favorite description of the movie is it's a second course of dessert. You're not going to say no to it. It's not going to be as good as the first round of dessert. You know, the ice cream is going to be a little warmer, or the cake is going to be a little more dried out, or whatever. But you're not going to say no to it. It's still a second course of dessert. You're going to love it. But yeah, like it does not have the same flavor and fun as that first round. There's no way of getting around that. Seconds are never as good as the first round. But again, I only like it for the structural issue of they were trying for a coherent villain that was like a specific villain that they were going to defeat, which was Vigo the Carpathian. That's the only thing that I liked about the movie number 2 over number 1. That's it. Outside of that, no, it's not as good.
Okay. How about you, William? Have you got any thoughts on this Ghostbusters 2?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was good. From what I remember, it was. Yeah, I didn't have an issue with it. I know it's hard to emulate, and when it's such a good film, they can't do it. They always regurgitate, and you can see why it's commercialized and the whole lot, and they want to keep it going. And I don't know how many they've made now in terms of series and cartoons and all sorts of stuff, but it's kind of never ending, I guess, because they always want to make money. But the evil guy, the baddie in that movie, I always refer to him as looking a bit like Tony Blair. I think there's a resemblance there. And I remember the goo as well. I thought they done that really well in terms of the effects. So yeah, I thought it was quite good. I quite liked it.
By the way, Will, you're a bit distorted on the voice. Have you done something?
I don't think so. I must have. I'll have a look.
Well, it sounds fine now, but when you were speaking there, it was distorted. Okay. How about you, Stetson? What was your thoughts on Ghostbusters 2? Did you see it?
Yeah, I went to pictures to see it, and similar to what everybody else was saying, it wasn't. Once again, it was massively hyped. But everybody knew it wasn't going to be as good. It can never be as good, can it? I mean, there's a very, very rare exceptions where the second film is better than the first, with the odd exception thing. Like, well, Empire Strikes Back, even though Star Wars is great, Empire Strikes Back that's number one in that particular series. I would say that maybe The Godfather Part 2, Pip's Godfather Part 1, maybe. I don't know. It's probably on a par. But this one, you knew it was never going to capture lightning in a bottle second time around. But it wasn't awful. It wasn't like, you thought to yourself, oh, I've wasted 2 hours of my life. It's just that, you expected all of the main characters to be in it, which they were. And the storyline, if anything, there was a lot more thought had gone into it. So it potentially wasn't as organic as the original one, particularly things like script and that, because after the first one had been such a box office smash, basically through Saturday Night Live ad-libbing in a lot of respects, all of the money men would probably thought, oh yeah, well, we have to really give this a proper go this time, and ballsed it all up. Although it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible. And the main baddie was a good baddie because, of course, he was German. Before the Americans realised if you want a real baddie, get an English bloke to do it.
Yeah.
if you want a proper baddie, get an English bloke. Yeah, that was always the thing, wasn't it? Well, this bloke was a German one. And in fairness, the visual effects were more polished. Everything about it was slightly more polished, but it didn't harken back to the originality of the first one, because the first one was very original.
Yeah.
I can't remember any other film of the era where, tell you what, we catch ghosts for a living. We'll detect and catch ghosts for a living. It was particularly unique. There have been ghost films before. We detect a woman trying to hide them, things like poltergeist and that, which come up before.
Now your sound has gone.
Eh? My sound?
Your sound had gone crazy there.
Oh God! I'm certain we're under attack because my Wi-Fi's been really spotty these last few weeks. So
yeah,
I do apologise. Yeah.
Hey, you sounded fine, and suddenly Bob went the same as William. It's back again. Oh, you're back again. Fine.
Yeah, it's
strange.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well,
honest to God, right? I'm unfortunately I'm with Sly because I got a TV deal that included broadband that was inexpensive, and there's a reason why it was inexpensive, because it's shit. But having said that, I'd maybe get one, because I've got this old these routers, because you get a brand new router when you sign up, and this one's literally 18 months old, if that. And you've got 3 lights on. One is power, one is connected to the network, and one is your Wi-Fi. And the connected to the network one, in recent times, has been going off, that I've noticed at least a couple of times a day in recent history. Now, so, and basically since the current thing started in October. Yeah, that's when I correlate all these problems I've been having. Before then, you would get the odd one, but it'd be like sort of once every month or several weeks.
Yeah.
Literally now it's like every few days, and I have a horrible feeling that they're softening people up. I mean, Toffee spoke about this in the back before one of the streams, saying I'm certain they're softening people up to get little outages here and there, so they when they plan their next move, they can take it out and say, oh, it's because X, Y, Z, or sunspot activity or some shite. But we all know it's orchestrated by the demons in charge.
Yeah.
But a few weeks ago, we were doing the Saturday stream, and my internet, my box just went off completely. All the lights bar one light went off, and it was just red, and it was like literally flashing red, and that was basically an everything fault. And sure enough, and I think it took about 10 minutes or so to come back, because I left poor Toffee on his own in the chat for good measure. But since then, and that was probably a couple of weeks in October, so after the current thing had started, and I started getting these glitch outs, and I'd power it off and power it on.
Yeah.
Not often, but when I have a glitch like that, I'd do that anyway, just to make sure it's just not a ropey thing. But yeah, unfortunately, I've noticed quite a few people in streams recently have been suffering similar sort of glitch outs, and it was never ever like that before. So I just can't, because people say, "Oh, you're very cynical." Yes, I am. I can't feel that there's something more untoward going on than meets the eye. But just to draw a line under Ghostbusters 2, I did go and see it. The pictures wasn't as good. Still enjoyed it because I actually was old enough to go with my mates, so I ended up going with my mates then, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And but like I say, it wasn't as good. But yeah.
And your thoughts, Samuel, about number 2?
Yeah, well, I spoke about it a wee bit earlier. It couldn't live up to the hype. No way it could live up to the hype. Still a good film. Very much more focused and constructed with a set villain. Less obvious ways for free-form delivery and ad-libs. So maybe it wasn't quite as funny. It was a bit more serious. It was more reliant upon Murray, I felt. He had a bigger role in it. The other characters certainly took a back seat. Ernie Hudson's character was near invisible. But at the same point, it did bring Lewis and Janine a bit more into it. And obviously, Sigourney Weaver's character was more prominent. But yeah, it's just one of those ones you don't get lightning in the bottle twice. But solid enough. It should have ended there and never talk about the old female again. And the worst thing about that film is that they just totally disregard that the events happened. They just totally dismiss it in that film, I believe.
Did they really?
Yeah, they forgot that the first movie happened. All the characters, all the people in the city were like, oh yeah, I guess nothing ever happened. There was no great big giant crazy thing that happened at the top of a building where half the city almost got destroyed. There was an earthquake or whatever, and ghosts were running rampant. The entire city forgot. And you're like, wait, what? What are you talking about? What?
Right.
Yeah. Even though it does I might be mixed up with the Afterlife one where There is a scene where they show an old-fashioned TV with a clip from the film. I don't know if it's in that one or the newer one. So it makes even less sense that they reference it and then totally disregard the events.
Oh. Obviously, I haven't seen it, so I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, and never, ever watch it.
Yeah,
I-
I'm not gonna say never watch it, but I stand by my idea that yeah, it's like a second helping of ice cream. It's not gonna be as good as the first, so take that for what you will.
Okay, I can live with that idea. Right, have you got any last thoughts on this movie, William? Any sort of summarisations that you might want to give us regarding any aspect of the film itself?
Just to be honest, I think it's a great film. I can't find any fault with it. I don't know if I'd call it a kids' film. I agree with it being aimed at everyone. You can see everyone any age relating to some part in the film or a character in the film, and it's like a timeless classic. It'll last forever. They'll be watching it in 1,000 years from now, and they'll be playing the tune. It'll still be somebody's bloody ringtone, I'd imagine. It's that timeless, honestly. You could imagine it would never go away. The guy I noticed as well when I was reading about it, Slimer never got his name until later in either number 2 or a series they done. So he wasn't Slimer until till later on, which I always thought he was already Slimer in number 1. But there you go.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
great.
It was the animation that they gave him a name.
Yeah, that's the one. Aye, that's it. But yeah, I loved it. So a great choice.
Excellent. Samuel, any summary that you would like to add to what you've already said?
Yeah, it brought everyone together. You know, dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
You're quoting. You're
Yes,
quoting.
yes. And the thing for me, and although this doesn't reach an international audience that could relate, but perhaps the censored version, which was the one that I was most familiar with growing up, the changes to the dialogue remain in my head even when I watch the original film. It's just hilarious, you know, when they say, "Yes, this man has no D," and then the censored version say, "Yes, this man has no Twinkie." You know?
Yeah, that's right. They called the guy Mr. Dickless.
Yeah, yeah,
That was comical. That
yeah,
great scene.
yeah. I think in the censored version, they just like, yeah, Wally Wick, yeah, Wally Wick. So in my head, it's still got the censored dialogue in it. So when I hear the actual uncensored version on my DVD, it's like, oh, it's a bit fresh, you know.
Excellent. So, Eki, what's your last summary of this film that you chose?
It's flawed, but it's big, stupid fun, and so I love it, and I can't help it. That's basically it.
That'll do nicely. Sensible. How about yourself? What's your last summary on this film?
Well, I haven't. I probably haven't seen this film in probably well over 20 years. So it was nice reacquainting myself with it, and it was also nice refamiliarizing myself with a few of the one-liners and some of the clear ad libs that sort of almost had the rest of the cast corpsing. Yeah, Is as a kid when I watched it the first time around, it was probably bordering on a 10 out of 10 when you're a kid. Oh, this is mint. But even now, as a grown up, it's probably a solid 7.5 from me. I'd still give it a 7.5, and I reckon it'd be a great film. William, as and when you can persuade them to watch with your kids, because kids tend not to be until they get of a certain into the teens probably. Kids are probably a lot more accepting of the mechanical effects than what the older sort of your early teens etc. are, who are now hyper normalized in ultra realistic CGI. So if you get them to watch it while they're a bit younger, then I think you'd be on a winner, because I think they'd enjoy it, especially if you watch the uncensored one, because it still detracts from the overall viewing of it, in my opinion. But yeah, enjoyed watching it again. Loved it when I was, like I say, when I was growing up. Loved it. Loved the film. So it was a happy reacquaintance.
Excellent. Okay, folks, one last time. We'll start with William. Out of 10, what would you give this, William?
I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. And you know, my favorite line is when he's out with the girl, and the girl's got a guy with her, and he's like he's sniffing some Vicks flu solution, and he's like, "Who's this stiff?" That just cracked me up, man. Honestly, it was so funny. But yeah, it's got to be a 9 from me. It's got to be.
Okay, no. Excellent. Samuel, what would you give it out of 10?
You're looking a little pale, sir. A little pale. Yeah, you should look at it looked at. I think that was another Murray ad lib. A 9.
9 for you too?
It's a 9, yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
excellent.
Good man.
So, said some yourself?
Yeah, like I say, when I was a kid, probably 10 out of 10. Now I'm a little bit older, probably 7.5. I think that's fair. I think that's, for me, that's fair anyway.
Okay. Eki, your choice. Where'd you put it?
I'm actually with Setsum on this one. When I was a kid, like top 10, absolutely top 10 favorite movies. And now I'm like, no, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And I struggle between 7.5 and an 8. I'm going to say I can't. Yeah, either a 7.5 or an 8, one or the other. But somewhere in that region. And the only reason for that is because that last fight, the last act, did not have the punch that I wanted it to have. So I'm going to say 7.5, only because of that one reason. But the thing is that, like, a lot of that movie was just freaking hilarious. One of my favorite throwaway gags was when Sigourney Weaver's character, Dana, she's going up to her apartment in the very beginning of the movie, and then Rick Moranis' character, I forget his name, but the short little guy. What's that?
Lewis Tully.
Lewis, thank you. Lewis, he hears her going, like, she's trying to creep through the hallway so that she doesn't disturb him, so that he won't notice her. But then the door opens and she rolls her eyes. And she's like, all right, fine, I have to deal with this guy now. And then they have their conversation. She figures out a way to get into her apartment without telling him to go away. So she goes into her apartment, and then the camera just lingers on Lewis. And he goes and walks back towards his apartment. He's like, all right, I'm going to go have a shower. And then he goes to the door, and he locked himself out of the door. And it's just like a second and a half of him figuring out that his door is locked. I don't know why. I love that little bit right there. It's those
Yeah.
little tiny things that make the movie. It's just a bunch of stupid gags. So that's why I still like. That's why I waffle back and forth between 7.5 and an 8, because all those dumb gags, I love them. Like, and again, Lewis, the little guy, he's being chased by the demon dog, and then he goes to the outside of a restaurant, and the demon dog is like lurching at him at the restaurant, and then he screams, and the entire restaurant looks over, and it's just this guy up against a glass panel screaming at nothing in particular because they can't see the demon dog. Only he
Yeah.
can see the demon dog. And they're like confused as to why this weirdo is screaming outside. And they just go back to eating. I don't know why, but I love that stupid kind of humor. So that's the only reason why I waffle back and forth between an 8 and a 7.5. But yeah, I'm gonna say 7.5 only because of my obsession with plot and structure. That's the only reason.
Okay, that's fair enough. High marks indeed. High marks indeed. So that moves us very nicely on to, and our sensum will keep us right here. Who gets the next pick, sensum?
Well, it depends because the rotation shifted now. So the last one before we moved on to the new board was William, and then it was me, then yourself, John, and now we've just had Eki. So I would say chronologically it should be Samuel's pick.
Right. Samuel's pick. And what genre is left for him?
Yeah, we've got a cavalcade of genres. I've put Ghostbusters down as comedy. I hope everybody's okay with that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a comedy. It's a comedy. Yeah.
So we have action, biopic, documentary, fantasy, horror, sci-fi, sports, and western. So an absolute cavalcade of options there. So the only, and probably easy to say which ones are not available, and that is comedy, drama, and thriller. So yeah, dip your bread. Action, biopic, documentary, fantasy, horror, sci-fi, sports, and western.
So there you go, my boy. Plenty
You've
of
only got
choice.
15 seconds to pick. Go, hurry now, do it.
Oh, take your time. I'm only grateful it's not William's pick. Christ, he picked some shit. Well, anyway.
Stir, stir, stir.
But obviously, you don't have to choose tonight.
No.
And as soon as you decided, just let me know.
Mhm.
Come and knock on my door, and I shall make a note of it.
Yeah,
Spread.
when you knock on the door, make sure you go, "Here's Johnny."
Absolutely. So there you go, son. Yeah, that's up to you. You make your choice. Be interesting.
Okay.
I cannot anticipate what you're likely to choose, but I'm sure it'll be interesting, whatever it is. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we are getting close to Christmas, folks. So what is there any thoughts about what we should do on the next review date? Should we do a review? Should we carry on? Or should we consider it to be the new year and treat it differently? Any thoughts?
Hold on a second.
31st. The last Friday in
Yeah.
November is obviously the 29th. Do we want to do that?
Well, I'm available to do then. So I don't know. Depends on the people with younger families, William.
Exactly,
No,
William. How do
no,
you
that'll be
feel
good.
about?
That's all good, aye.
You're okay with that there, the 29th?
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Eke?
Oh man, I'm all booked up from the 28th to the 3rd. I'm sorry, man. No, I'm joking. I'm fine.
Excellent.
Wouldn't it be curious if Samuel picked Albert Finney's Christmas Carol? Oh,
Don't that you're getting pushed or prodded here by
no. Pick whatever you want. God no. No.
More chance of the Muppets Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's a brilliant film. That is a truly excellent film. I love that film. Michael Caine. That is honestly. I say that unironically. I laughed my lungs out when I watched that film. There's a scene in that film where is it the little rats or whatever they are that go to Scrooge and say, "Mr. Scrooge, just wondering any chance of a bit extra coal on the fire there? How would they like to find themselves suddenly unemployed? Heat wave, oh my island," and they're all in Hawaiian shirts. Brilliant scene, absolutely brilliant.
So we're okay then for Friday the 29th as our next movie review evening.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, that's fine then, son. It's up to you to think on it, and you can let us know when you have made your decision as to what film we should be discussing.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen either of those two films. Finney or the Muppets.
Yeah.
So I've got no preferences either way.
No, that wasn't a pick. That's still up for grabs. Got all those categories. So, well, you haven't got comedy anymore, so unlucky.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll think of something, my boy.
Yeah. I've got one in mind. It's a bit obvious, so I'm trying to think of alternatives.
Doesn't matter. Obvious is good. Doesn't have to be like the
Yeah.
thing. Be like everybody likes good films.
Yeah.
Were you not an extra in that film, Sensor?
Which one?
Muppets.
Yes, I was. I was Fozzie Bear's stunt double. Actually, if you watched it carefully. Yeah.
I believe you.
Quite. So anyway, I'm going to wind down the live stream, and we'll each say our own goodbyes. Oops. Streaky Bacon is asking, before you finish, I would enjoy your thoughts on the Dublin riots, if you have time, mate, that is. Well, okay, I don't know how much Eki can add to this subject, but we could start with Eki, and we can do a quick go round if that's okay with everyone. Eki, do you know anything about these riots in Dublin?
Yeah, they're trying to control the narrative right now, and I think they're failing. They're doing the same thing everywhere. They've been doing this for decades, obviously. But the thing is that on a if you go through the comment section on all of the if you go through Irish Twitter, basically, go through the comments and just read what they have to say. Yes, you will absolutely see a bunch of, oh my gosh, my diversity is super strength and we have to preserve or whatever, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, just look on the ground and look at what people are actually saying. And I'm watching changes happen. And I would swear that this is not the actual direction of the ire, of the anger, of the distrust and resentment, I think it's not a good direction in terms of how it's being focused, where it's being focused, and what's being done. That's my actual opinion. On the other hand, the fact that there is actually a reaction, that's outstanding, and I love it. So I do not endorse anything that is being done specifically, but I absolutely love to see that they're not being completely passive. That's outstanding. That's a really, really good turn, and I like that one single element of it. And my hope is that they can find ways to be a little bit more, for want of a better phrasing, constructive. These things need to be dealt with on a policy level. You cannot go dirty Harry on anything. That's not a good. That's not good. In order to have a good and just and peaceful society, which is what we want, which is the goal, you cannot resort to tactics that are anti-civilization. So I'm trying to be careful about how I phrase things for specific reasons. So please, if I waffle, it's only because word selection is important right now. I think it's highly encouraging, and I am watching in my own spheres people that I know IRL. I am watching people question certain narratives, and I'm watching people shift their thought patterns. And I refer specifically to the concept that, for example, I love typing this on Twitter. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. I highly recommend that other people do something similar in their own way, their own verbiage. You know, you don't have to use my words. That's not important at all. But Ireland belongs to the indigenous white Irish. I love typing that out. And I'm watching people have shifts in their thought patterns. Again, with respect to that concept, in real life, people that I know, that I interact with, not online, in real life. So I regard it as highly encouraging, and I wish them all the best, and I pray that they are focused in their activities such that they can change things on a policy level. That's what matters. Policy, policy, policy.
Well, Toffee here is letting us know that he and Sensum are going to be covering this tomorrow. This is going to be their headline story for the live stream that they do. So that should be interesting and worthwhile for all our audience. Well, obviously, I'm not. Well, I will. I was going to say, I don't think I need to ask you, Sensum, but I actually will. Although you're going to be covering this with Toffee tomorrow, if you want to give us a few words.
Yeah, 8 o'clock on my channel tomorrow night. It's the special report. No, I mean it all blew up quite quickly because I put together a few bits and bobs. I even had a local story which I had as a scoop of the week because they are going to be building a massive film studio here in Sunderland on the old dockyards area. Used to be the it used to be Plessie's as I used to remember it, but I can't remember what name they call the factory, but it used to be the big Plessie's shipyard. So they've got a little bit of regeneration going. So, but
Good.
yeah, then the island story occurred. But the thing is, my opinion on this has been a tragic incident. And the more that the regime tries to stifle it, because initially they came out with, an Irish national, yeah,
Sure.
which means a foreigner, yeah,
Sure.
you know, But I mean, the BBC, I did a parody thing where, you know, I actually did a parody of the BBC's actual headline, which was almost as bad as my parody. And my parody said, "Knife unhurt after attack," because it literally was that bad, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody hurt by somebody in Ireland. That's, you know, we won't go into the details. Oh, it's an Irish national. This bloke's an Algerian. And then this was one of the greatest cell phones I've seen in the media, because they said, yes, but he's been living in Ireland for 25 years. Oh, right, okay then. So therefore, the multiculturalism and integration clearly doesn't work if he's been here for 25 years. Then you've just shot yourself in the foot, because that basically means it doesn't matter how long they've been here, they still don't want to integrate and they can still kick off. Thank you for that, BBC. You've just advertised the fact that we don't need any of these people in our countries. Thank you. But anyway, we will be covering that in slightly more detail, and also the usual responses. But the most encouraging thing about the entire situation, as awful as it is, you know, we shouldn't have to resort to you know, seeing things that are clearly not a win for our peoples across all of the 5 nations of the British Isles when something of this nature happens. However, where people were gaslit before with Manchester Arena and the London Bridge, and even as early as June this year with those Nottingham attacks, you know, let's do the controlled spontaneity, which is a real thing that the 77th Brigade, etc., do, which is part of their behavioural psychology and social engineering group. Is we will, as soon as anything like this kicks off, we will have what's called a controlled spontaneity, which is we'll have in place certain things like we'll get together the local rabbi, the local imam, the local priest to all pray together and, you know, give thanks to how wonderful we are as a nation. Don't look back in anger and all that bullshit. Yeah. Now, especially because there's got the Irish slant going on there and some big names like Conor McGregor, etc., coming out and questioning, you know, do we need this kind of crap anymore? When all of the news publications, whether they are mainland Britain or in Ireland, are saying like, you know, oh, far right extremists cause riots and everything, you know, the usual gaslighting. Nobody in the chat's having it anymore. I know, and one bloke, one of the media people I saw earlier was saying, "Oh, I've had threats of people shouting at me and all that lot," and then all of the comments underneath his tweet or whatever it is have been saying, "Well, what do you expect when you demonising everybody, you know, under this one great big banner?" You know, and it literally wasn't anything like that. And also, what you forgot to mention, the looting aspect of it were actually foreigners who were using the protesters, the genuine Irish protesters, were using that as a smokescreen to go and loot. And when the Irish people were collaring them and saying, "Oh, you know, what do you think you're doing?" because they were caught them looting and robbing, they were all bloody foreigners. So once again, it's another great big own, but they won't come out and say that. So all of the comments under these stories, which are demonizing the people who feel an offense that this has had to happen yet again to their people, right? And the mainstream press are effectively saying, "Oh, you know, the hateful people, hateful this, hateful that." Everybody under the chat saying, "Yeah, we're not falling for this shit anymore. Sorry, mainstream media, right? You've had your shot at gaslighting us. We understand exactly what's going on, and this shit will not stand." So, if nothing more, then hopefully it'll be a wake-up call to everybody. Yeah. You know, and that this needs to be, you know, like I say, they're always tragic.
Properly highlighted, said some is what it needs.
Yeah, but like I say, it's always on the back of a tragic event, and where the containment system has been able to manage the rage and the output with, you know, the usual don't look back in anger and Oh, we'll have a strongly worded candlelit vigil
Yeah.
There's
the day after,
there's
and then it's
also
forgotten about.
I just got to jump in for a moment. You're right that there is a lot of the comments when they're not blocked, when the comments
Yeah.
are allowed. There are a lot of comments of people saying precisely that we're not going to be gaslit.
Yeah.
But the ones where the comments are blocked, you'll notice that they get really ratioed in terms of likes versus quote tweets.
Yeah.
So you can even see the ratio happening with the ones where they block the comments. I find that encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to say anything, son. Do you want to say anything about this incident?
I know nothing.
Okay. It's fair enough. William, have you got anything to say here?
Do you know what? I think it's an incident that a lot of people have seen coming, and it sounds a bit terrible, but this is the world that we're in. Folk have kind of almost been expecting it, something to happen, either here or anywhere they're putting these people into hotels. And I mean, I said it at the meeting that I went to here in Elgin. We had a meeting at the town hall, and I said it was a cocktail for chaos. No matter what way you looked at it, no matter what side you were on, who you were for or against, it was a cocktail for chaos. There was only going to be trouble. And I've said to people, expect the worst. If you're near any of these hotels or that, be on your guard. Anything could happen without putting too much fear into anybody, but you've got to be on your toes. You've got to have your eyes peeled. With it happening in Ireland, I guess, I mean, they don't take any shit. Let's face it. So something must have happened. I'm unsure about the reports, but they're clearly unhappy. What will come of it, I'm unsure. I reckon it might just blow over because, unfortunately, the majority of folk don't seem to care anyway. I mean, they're here. They're already here. There's more coming. They had a meeting about the hotels. Nobody said very much about it. Most people wanted to try and help them, which is staggering to me. I mean, but again, that's the world we're in. They reckon that they can help these refugees, if we can call them that, and some of them are even putting their homes up, offering a home for them, which is quite staggering. I mean, they'd never offer their house for someone that's down and out here, a drug addict, an alcoholic, a homeless guy. They don't care. They don't want to hear it. But the virtue signalling that comes along with helping a so-called fucking, refugee or whatever it may be, I find a bit astonishing. But yeah, it might escalate even more, to be honest. It could extend. I noticed I was uptown today, and I did see a group of these hotel inmates, and they were all together. So they're going about in a group now, which they've maybe been advised to do, because they'll be all under a bit of agitation with what's going on, going by what I've heard about them in the past. So yeah, I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it, but I'm always prepared. And if it kicks off, man, I'll be there. I'll be there because it's like a calling that I've got, and I feel like if I'm not going to stand up for my community, then who's going to do it? So if not us, then who? Basically. So I've got principles that I want to stand by. So I'm keeping an eye on it because they're basically right on our doorstep here as well. 50 to 60 of them banged up in a fucking hotel like a prison, and they get all the best of gear, all the taxis for nothing. A taxi driver that I spoke to, he's not happy the way that they get treated, getting abused, stuff thrown at their car, and they don't even pay for it. The hotel ends up paying. So there's a lot of not aggression as such, but aggravation going on, and you can see it. It's not heading in a good way, and I dread to imagine what's happened over there. but there's a lot of people not happy. That's for sure.
I know that in this town we've got nearly 300 black Africans now. We've also got, I have seen for myself, youngsters beginning to coalesce together in groups that will, in my opinion, eventually become gangs hanging about in the centre. Well, where the bus terminus is. I'll say no more than that. Obviously, I disapprove, but at the moment, that's as much as I can do. So, anyway, folks, I think we should leave that topic for Sensum and our good friend Toffee for tomorrow night. I'm sure they'll go into it in great detail and depth and add plenty of useful and wise words to what's actually going on and what will happen between then and now. So, last words for goodbye, and I'll bring on the outro music. Would you like to say goodbye, William? I know you've got the dogs and all that to go and do.
Yeah,
Go on.
at least it's not raining, so that's one thing. Yeah, great to be back on, and I look forward to catching up again. I'm unsure when I'm live, so it's anybody's guess at the moment. I'm snowed in with so much assessments and all
Oh,
sorts
of
going
course, it's
on.
that
So,
time of the year, isn't it? At
yeah,
college.
it's getting a bit hectic. So honestly, but I'll get there. I feel like I can pass it. I'm quite content with where I'm at, but I want to aim a wee bit higher than getting just an average pass.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm kind of setting a goal to get the uh, a merit possibly, or at least a recommendation. So fingers crossed. But that all comes with putting in the effort. So
Yeah.
if I put in the effort, I'll manage. If I don't, I'll maybe get a pass. Fingers crossed. So
Well,
a lot
here's
going
hoping.
on, but yeah. Thanks, John. It's great to be back and great to see you. Cheers, troops. Take care.
Okay, no, my friend. So, who will be next then? Eki, any last words?
Remember to floss.
Uh,
And I guess that's about it. I hope everyone has a good evening and be well. And I guess that's about it. All right, guys. Cheers.
Okay, okay. Remember floss, guys. Samuel, any last words?
Who you going to call?
Ghostbusters!
Yeah. Thanks for having me again.
Always a pleasure, my son. Always a pleasure. Say some last words.
Thank you for having us on again, John. It's been a great stream yet again. Really good engagement in the chat as always. And I look forward to Samuel's pick for the next one.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I have not a clue what he'll choose, but I look forward to it. So, folks, I hope you have enjoyed the live stream tonight. It's the weekend. There's plenty of live streaming going on, especially with what's happened in Ireland. You'll have Sensum and Dovey tomorrow night discussing it. Ragnar, no doubt, will cover it. And others, I have no doubt, will delve into it. So you can watch this stuff. If you get a bit of weather, take time away from the computer. Give yourself some breathing time. Think about other things. And I make one one more appeal, not the last appeal, but another appeal for our upcoming food bank. So if you could afford a donation for the food bank for Christmas time, that would be terrific. Made through Buy Me a Coffee, of course. And every little counts and every little helps. So if you can, please send us a donation and it will go into the big pot of donations. But until the next time, I shall say, as I always say, adios, au revoir, cheerio, and bye for now. And I'll play the music.